Hello and welcome to this video, installing the Ansible Lab. With this course, we have a fantastic lab experience that will allow you to access Ansible and a number of guests, either in your web browser or via SSH, directly from your system. The environment for this course is hosted on GitHub. If you navigate to the following URL, you'll see the code, and within this are detailed instructions for the setup. Given the variances in operating systems, I will be keeping this page up to date, so I encourage you to read through the entire README, just in case there are issues that have been encountered since this video was published. We're going to go through an example setup. I'm using Mac OS X, but this process has been proven to work on Mac OS X, Windows, and Linux. There's some very slight variations for each OS, and I'll be covering that in the video. So firstly, let's take a look at the repository. Okay, so this is the repository. As I actually mentioned, you can actually see here we have detailed instructions of how to actually set up the course lab. Some things I want to actually bring your attention to. So we need to have both Docker and Docker Compose installed. If you went through the previous videos, you should have this set up already. I recommend that you download and configure this to the Dive into Ansible-Lab folder within your user home directory. If you happen to be on a Mac or a Linux system, or even a Windows system which has Git installed, you should be able to just do a Git clone of this repository direct into your user home directory. If you don't, or you actually prefer to download the repository, you can do so at that URL listed there. This validation section is of particular importance, and after you've cloned the repository or you've extracted it via the zip file, please go through and actually check that all of your paths tally up with those listed for the corresponding operating system. There's a section here which makes reference to a hidden file called .env. You can largely ignore this section, but I place it there for people who may be running older versions of Docker or operating systems. Most modern combinations of operating systems and Docker don't actually need this. If, after starting the lab, you have a problem logging in as the Ansible user and it's not accepting your password, this is an area which you will need to visit. You can then run the lab by running Docker-Compose up from either your command prompt or your terminal, directly from the Dive into Ansible-Lab directory. If this goes well, you should then be able to browse in your browser to localhost 1000 and you'll get the portal interface. Periodically in the future, I will be updating the images as new versions of Ansible come out. If you wish to actually update those images, you can quite simply do a Docker-Compose pull. If you want to refresh the lab at any point, you can do a Docker-Compose rm, and the next time you do an up, it will actually refresh the lab. As we're using volumes for the home directories, your data that you actually have there should be persistent. Okay, let's see this in action. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and because I'm on a Mac system, I'm going to use Git. So we go to code, and I'm going to copy this, but if you wish to, you can do the download zip here, and I'm going to go to my terminal. If I do a pwd, you can actually see I'm in /users/James, and what I'm going to do is a git clone on that repository. If you wish to, you can download the zip file and unzip this, and you'll be in exactly the same situation. Okay, great, so that has done that. Now we can change directory into Dive into Ansible-Lab. We're going to have a look at that .env file. And within this file, we've got the SSHD port that our lab guests are going to listen on. So if you did actually want to use SSH natively rather than actually using the web interface that's provided, you can actually connect on your local host to those ports and you'll be able to access the systems direct from there. Then underneath, we've got TTYD, which is the web terminal we're using here, and that has the ports that we're connecting to for each of those. At the bottom there, we have a commented section, and as per what I mentioned previously, you shouldn't need to update this unless you actually have problems logging in as the Ansible user. Okay, and what we should be able to do now at this point is a docker-compose up. Okay, brilliant. So that's working. And now, if we actually go to our browser, we should be able to browse to localhost :1000. Okay, great. And then we've got the actual starting page, and then go across to Ansible Terminal. Click Ubuntu-C. And at this point, you should be able to log in as Ansible with the password of password. Perfect. If it doesn't actually log you in with Ansible and password, there is something wrong with that configuration file. And the reason being, when these images start, they make reference to those directories, and it's part of the configure process that Ansible user gets set up. So if you actually have a problem at this point, what I actually want you to do is go back to your terminal or your command prompt and press Ctrl-C. You can then do a docker-compose rm, and then you can remove those, and then you can tweak your configuration file again, the .env file. And once you're actually happy with that, you can then run a Docker Compose up again. And once you've got that working as expected, it should actually allow you to log in as that Ansible user. The course also provides the ability to be used for free from Google Cloud Shell. To do this, navigate to diveinto.com/p/playground. And click the button there. Now, at this point, you can actually choose to trust the repo or not. It's literally just some markdown files, but either way, it will work as trusted or not trusted. By default, Cloud Shell will be running in ephemeral mode, so the data will be lost as soon as the session is closed. This is fine if you want a quick throwaway Ansible environment, but to have your changes saved, switch off ephemeral mode. It will then re-provision your instance. And now we can follow the tutorial on the right-hand side. During the course, we manually set up SSH keys to fully explain the process and how SSH keys work. If you strictly want to follow the course, then skip this step. Otherwise, follow it to automatically set up SSH relationships between all of the hosts for both the Ansible and the root user. And if we follow through the remaining steps, and then we start the lab. This takes a moment to start the environment. we can actually click this helper here, which would actually show us what icon to actually use. So instead, I'm just going to go up to this icon at the top, and from there we can click preview on port 8080, and now you have the lab environment ready to go, running in Google Cloud Shell. I hope you enjoyed this. Please join me in the next video configuring SSH connectivity between hosts.